Hey everyone, today we're going to be solving a bunch of puzzles here on chess.com. Now, tactics are the most essential part of the game, and even more until a very high rating. I would say until a low master level. Tactics are by far the most common deciding factor in games, and it's definitely the stuff you need to work on if you are watching this video. So we're going to be, as I said, solving a bunch of puzzles here on chess.com. And my top score there you can see is 50, which is already quite high rated puzzles. But I don't know how many I'll get here, maybe less, maybe more. This video will probably be very long, so I'm going to break this down into sub-chapters, like maybe 1 through 20 and then 20 through 40, etc. So without further ado, let's get right on into it. These puzzles, by the way, I should say, they progressively get harder. So the first ones are quite easy, and then they step up the difficulty. But I'm going to try to dim it down for everyone. So I believe anyone from that knows the basic rules of the game can understand the way I'm going to break down these puzzles. So as I mentioned in some other video there in the channel. In tactics, there are three things we mainly look for, which are checks, and then captures, and threats. So that's the first thing I think about when I am thinking about tactics. So here we play with the black pieces, and well, the first thing we think about is checks. So any checks that are useful. Knight d3 hangs a knight, and knight takes b3 is a capture as well as a check, and it also attacks the opponent's rook. Now, and I should have done this in the beginning, but let's just check the material count. So we have 1, 2, 3, 6 pawns, and they have 3, 6, 7. So they're up a pawn, equal pieces in terms of value. So they're up a pawn, right? So here we regain the pawn, and next we're just going to take the rook. So what I think is, well, let's say they move their king, I take the rook. What are they going to do, right? Are there any, we always have to think about the consequences of what we do and if we weaken something. But I don't really see what white can do of that effective there. They can take a pawn, but that's as far as they can go. And yeah, so we just take the rook. And this leads us directly to the next one. There's no pause between them. They just keep coming. That's why this is called a puzzle rush, even though this is survival mode. So basically there's no time. There's no timer to clock your how fast you need to go. Right, so this is black to move again. Now we're down a bunch of material. I'm not even going to count. Actually, I am. A pawn and a rook. 2 pawns and a rook. Okay, this rook is hanging, right? That's clear. It would be a capture, it would be a check, and it would actually be the strongest move in the game because it would be a checkmate. So, we get to the third one. Here it's white to move. We're down a queen for a bishop, it appears. A queen and some pawns. But thankfully we have the good old back rank checkmate to save us. This rook is hanging with check again. So what are they going to do after we take? And well, they can't move the king there because the bishop is controlling that. So they only have one move, which is rook to d8. Now that square is not protected, so I can also take, when my rook is there, I can also take that, and that would be checkmate. Right, fourth one. White to move again. First thing we think about, well, first of all, let's count the pieces. Okay, everything is equal. We have 2, 5, 6 against 2, 6. So every single material count is even here. It's white to move, so we can freely think about checks first. And actually, there happens to be a very strong one here, because again, it's checkmate, since there's no pieces that can block, and the bishop cannot be taken. Right, this one appears a little bit more complicated. Yeah. It's white to move. We have 4 pawns against 4, 2 bishops against a knight and a rook, so we're done in exchange. Our king is also severely misplaced. And in endings, an active king is worth a lot. So we're definitely in bad shape. So we really have to resort to some obscure tactics here. Now, okay, any checks? Yes, there is one. Accompanied by a thread, by a capture, I should say. Bishop takes c6. The king must move. This diagonal is cut off, and this pawn cuts off the a3 square, so the king must go to b3. And if you envision that position, what can we do there? First, we think of checks. There's bishop a4 check, which just hangs the bishop. There's bishop d5 check. Why would that be any good? Because we're checking the king and attacking the rook. That's called a double check. And after the king takes the pawn, for example, we can take the rook. And okay, we've won a piece, right? We've won a full rook, so we're up a piece there in that position. Same amount of pawns, we're up a piece, so that should be winning for us. And it is. So we take and we check. And notice how just capturing a loose pawn, you know, if you have nothing better, then yeah, I mean, go for it, even though it's, you know, this position is losing basically if white doesn't have this fantastic resource. Okay, this one is black to move. First we think of checks. Well, the material is even, so first we think of checks. There's no checks. Captures. There's only one capture. Bishop takes bishop. They would take back with the knight, and then we have this queen that can take their knight, so we would go up a piece. Again, quite simple. Okay, here it's white to move. The position is greatly simplified. So we're either taking this rook or mating the king if we're gonna win this position. Now there's no captures, there's no there's a check, which happens to be lethal, because if the king steps to the back rank, we can take their rook, and that's winning, rook versus king. I believe I've also covered that in videos quite some time ago. So check, they don't want to hang their rook, so they're gonna go king f6, or c3, excuse me, and defend their rook. But then we have another check, and this is, you can see that as the puzzles get harder and harder, something that's very difficult in chess is visualization and seeing the position ahead a couple moves, or sometimes many moves. So check king c3, and we have to see, okay, what do we do there? Do we have any checks? We do. Again, this rook a3 check. And what's the difference? Is that now we can take their rook no matter where their king goes, because they can't defend it, right? So check, check, and takes. And the whole reason why that puzzle worked so well in our favor is because everything is forced. It's all checks. And yeah, if you can find forcing moves that do something, that they're what I mean is we have to try and first look at the most forcing moves, because usually those are the ones that are more powerful. Right. So white to move here. We're down 2 knights and pawns. Okay. First we think of checks. So there's this check, which does nothing. There's this check with capture, which again does nothing. There's this check which hangs the rook. There's similar checks that hang the queen. There's this check on e4. And this could be interesting, because if they move their king, we can take their knight with checkmate. But they would have knight e6 only move. Oh, actually, they also have knight e7 there, which is probably even better. And yeah, that's just the end of the line, basically. So there's this check as well, which is the almighty check, because after king f8, again, only move, first move, we have queen takes knight with checkmate. So it's really, these tactics are really about finding forcing lines. Okay, black to move. White is threatening checkmate in 1. We're down a pawn, but don't forget this golden rule in endings: pawn quality over pawn quantity. So this pawn is worth way more than these two combined, because this one is so close to becoming a queen. So when pawns are really close to becoming a queen, we have to, brutally calculate, can they make it all the way to the end line? And in this case, they can. We give a check first to avoid getting mated. And also, we're clearing the path for our pawn to promote. Then we push, and see, no matter what white does, he just gave a random check. No matter what he does, we're just gonna queen next. And that means they're gonna have to sacrifice their rook. But in this case, they can't even do that because of the way the pieces are set here. They can't even sacrifice the rook for the pawn, so this is just absolutely winning because we're gonna go up a queen. Right, this is black to move. First we think of checks. There's this very tempting bishop takes f2 check. Not so tempting would be bishop b4, which hangs the bishop. Now bishop takes f2 is very interesting because in openings, and this we're still in the opening phase here, we want to get our king to safety, right? We want to get castled. And if they just go king, they have to move their king. Let's say king f1. They're definitely not getting castled. And their king is not that safe. So this is an interesting move. But when you see a good move, look for better. I believe it was Lasker, the second world chess champion, that said that. And okay, this check would be maybe good, but do we have better? Well, there's no more checks, so what could be better than that? Maybe this capture. Also, there's no more captures. Okay, there's this one, but it hangs the bishop. Knight takes f2. Looks much juicier because this would be a triple fork, right, with the knight. And especially this rook that's undefended here, we're just going to take it next because the queen must move. So that's also something very hard to do in chess. In chess, you have to have a lot of patience, and if you see a good move, you have to calm your shift down and look for a better one, because oftentimes you might miss an opportunity to finish off the game. Right, we have another ending. I like how these puzzles are sort of spreading apart the ideas, and they're they're not just all focused on one idea. So how do we do something here as black? We're down a pawn, but again, pawn quantity over pawn quality. And in this case, it's a matter of just calculation. So we need to promote this pawn because we're definitely not in time to take this one or defend our pawn. So we need to come here and take. So let's see. In these positions, you just rawly calculate. So king h3, king b5. So you have to calculate who gets to promote first, because usually that's the side who wins. So king h3, king b5, king takes h2, king takes a5, king takes g3. The king moves probably here, h4, a5, h3, a6, h2, a7, b queen. And yes, I know this is not that easy to see in advance. It's quite a lot of moves. This is sort of this stereotype that people think of GMs, like they calculate like 20 moves ahead. But usually the lines are very forcing, so there isn't too many branches, and you can sort of navigate it easily. And the whole reason why this is winning is because a queen from here controls this diagonal, and it prevents the opponent from queening as well. Otherwise, it would be a draw. So Chess.com is going to be kind enough to actually play the whole line, and okay, they just made some random king moves, but this is just winning. Right, puzzle number 11. Or number 12, I guess. White to move. Material is even, so we look for checks. We have this one on h5, and this would be great because it would dislodge the... Well, actually, this would be great because it would lead to checkmate. If the king must move, we have checkmate on f7. So they have to go g6. And what can we do there? Say g6 was a good move and we had to retreat, this check would have been completely worthless. But there's something better than retreating there. We can take on g6, taking advantage of this pin after pawn takes, which is forced. We can take their rook. So we've won a pawn and the rook for a knight, and that's really as simple as it gets. Okay, another ending. Okay, this one is nice. This one touches on probably one of the most important concepts in endings, the opposition, and the Zugzwang, which, two concepts that are very closely related. So it's black to move, and usually you want to grab the opposition in such king endings because it allows your king to infiltrate. So say my king was on h3, right? I could take this pawn and I would be winning. So how can my king attack this pawn, or this one, But this one is defended, so this one is much better to attack. We can go king f5, right? And you'll notice he plays king g3, because this is called a Zugzwang. It's when the opponent has no good moves. So if they go king e3 defending this one, I go king g4 and I take on h4. If they go king back, I just take this one straight away. So they go king g3 defending both, okay. But now I go king e4 and this is another Zugzwang because their king is going to have to move. And I just take the pawn next. And so that's how it works. Right, it's white to move. We're down some material because they have two bishops and a rook for our queen. So we're looking for checks. We have one here, some checks that hang the queen, and a check here. So these are our two candidate moves. This is also a very important thing to structure our calculation. And the method of candidate moves is one that I really like. You look at the position, you start seeing moves, and you have to narrow them down. You can't think about everything. You have to narrow the moves down, and you get just a couple, maybe 1, 2, 3 moves, and those are your candidate moves. And then you calculate one and the other, and you try to find out which one is better. So queen g6 check, they can block with the rook. They can also, even better, probably just to move the king. And, what does that really accomplish for us? There's really nothing much going on. We can give another check, but they just move their king. And that really leads nowhere. However, this check on b8 does two things. It attacks the bishop, and also in extra, it attacks the rook. So if the king were to defend the bishop, we could take their rook. The king moves to the side, so we can take this bishop, and now it's winning. Next one, it's white to move, and first thing we look for is checks. There's one, there's two actually, but this one would hang the queen. Not such a great idea, usually. But rook takes is indeed winning. Also notice we're down a piece, so we really have to do something fast. But we're winning here because after, this is called a clearance sacrifice. You just clear the defenders. It's probably one of the most brutal ways to attack. We clear the pawns, we come in with a queen, and this is usually deadly if it's so close to the king. And here we can calculate and see that it is, because here we have this other check, and they must block with a queen, and then we can take their rook. And that is the end of the line. Right, white to move. First thing we look for are checks. There's really no checks. So, okay, captures. We're down a knight, so why not capture this horsey? We could also capture this pawn, but we would still be down a knight, and that wouldn't do much. So this leads me to another method of thinking, which is thinking by exclusion. So what are our candidate moves, right? Really, the only one that I see is pawn takes knight, because there's nothing else, right? All other moves are bad, so this one must, well, this one must be the only one that we have. Even if it's bad, it's the only one we have. And this is it's very good to think this way in chess. You save a lot of time and energy, because, we can't be thinking forever about our moves. If we have a forced move, then we have to make it. And yeah, I was pretty sure the puzzle was gonna end there, which is funny. That puzzle was a bit random, but it does showcase this idea of exclusion. Right, it's white to move. We can take their bishop, and we should. Again, by exclusion. And now you'll notice this pawn cannot be stopped. While this one can, and is very easily stopped, this one cannot. So when they push, we don't keep on pushing. We first take a moment to take this pawn, and then we keep pushing, and we make a new queen. Back to the opening. It's black to move. Do we have any good checks? We have one here. They can block with the queen or the bishop. We have one here, which attacks this. So what do? They can't defend with the knight because we can take the pawn. So this just wins a piece. Right, it's white to move again. Okay, this one, you see, this one showcases the candidate moves method of thinking. So we're playing white, right? And we're down a bunch of material, but this king is very close to getting checkmated. So we can take this one. Do we take it? We don't. We come back and we think. There's two ways to take this, right? With the bishop or with the queen. If we take with the bishop, their only move is knight e7, and then we can take with the bishop, and they have to go king g8. King e8 would be bad because we just move the bishop with discover check. But they go king g8, and if you can visualize that, which is, again, not that easy, the king is just very well defended there. And we're down a bunch of materials, so maybe there's just nothing there. On the other hand, queen takes, they have to block with a knight, and then we can take the queen, and after king g8, it's actually very beautiful. You have to see that all the way here, if we have nothing here, we're toast. But we have this very nice tactic, queen takes, not queen takes, but queen e8 check, and after rook takes, we deliver the back rank checkmate with the rook. That one was very nice. Okay, it's white to move. We are definitely losing if we don't have something because this pawn is queening. So we think about checks, and we have two checks. Check on d7, they can block. And next, they're just gonna queen. We can take, but they take with the pawn. Nothing going on. Check here. Well, what does that really do? They just come back. Well, what it does is that now we have this very peculiar checkmate in the middle of the board with rook d7, and you see the king is cut off from all ranks and files, and that's a very weird checkmate. Okay, it's black to move. We're down a rook. This will be the last puzzle from this video, by the way. Actually, I'm not sure. I should have ended already, but I don't know if this is the 20th or the 21st, whatever. It's black to move, and again, by exclusion, I see a hanging queen. I don't have any checks. I don't have any other captures. So I just take, and what are they gonna do? But even straying away from what they're gonna do, this must be our only good move because there's nothing else that we can really think about. So we just take, they take, right? And now we just have to figure out what we do. We definitely don't want to block and give the queen right back. Now, I'm just not sure, because I believe that in chess.com puzzles, there's only one solution to, like, every single move. You only have one move. But here, I see two king moves, and I don't understand why one of them is bad. I hope this doesn't butcher the puzzle. Okay, it didn't. Okay, I see a hanging rook, and I'm just gonna take it. Because really there's nothing going on. They take our rook, but I just take, and we're just up a queen for a rook. So this puts an end to our 1 to through 21st puzzle progression here on chess.com. You can play these on your own. I believe non-premium members only have one. They can only play this once a day. So I would advise actually setting up each position on a real board, and because I think it's easier to visualize there. And yeah, really pay attention to these puzzles. Don't play them lightheartedly. And yeah, I'll see you soon with 20 through 40. So peace out, and I'll see you soon.